All right, welcome to setup and parts list for the aquaponic system. This is my outdoor system. Real quick, we're going to need a 3/4 inch cutoff riser, a 3/4 inch 90-degree elbow, two of these 3/4 inch threaded to regular PVC on the other end. Of course, the PVC pipe right here, we'll cut this off, so about 3 feet of it. 2 inches of this for the bell siphon, and then of course the cap for it. Let's get started on this bad boy.
Okay, so now I've got my hole started of where this needs to come through. Now, of course, this is too big at this point in time because I'm probably only going to have it like this tall, and it'll be like right here because that's the way it needs to sit inside there. But what I needed to do is put the hole where it goes between the pallet boards, basically. But I'll put together a whole little how to do all of this. So if you want to do it yourself, and of course, if you're in the Nashville area, you want me to do it for you, I'll be more than happy to. But more on that later. So now I've got my hole drilled. I got to waller this out a little bit, so I've got my handy dandy hole wallerer. Don't make me cut you. Anyway, and I just put it in here, and I just slowly go around and around and around like this. And you can get a big old drill bit and do it, but I just want to do it slowly because I want to make it where like I'll cut this little side part off and then check it, make sure I'm not taking out too much because I just want this to fit snugly. Would you call me snugly in that hole right there? So it doesn't matter if it leaks. It just doesn't, because it's going to be flowing through there anyway, and it won't leak a whole bunch. It doesn't have to be sealed is what I'm saying, but I'll show you when I get this done here in a minute. All right, and so I finally got it. It's in the hole, and it's nice and tight, just like it. But of course, that's upside down because it's going to go this other way. But the other thing is, you'll notice I wallered this out, so it has a little bowl on top of it like that, and that's to create the Venturi effect. Anyway, more on all that good stuff later. I'm going to get this thing turned over. We're going to get this thing put in there, and we'll get her set up. But this guy goes right in there like that, and then this guy will come right over the top of it, and then I'll get it the right size. And what it will do is, like, I'm going to cut it about where this bell is probably this high, and then that way it'll have about this much gravel on top, just about to right here. But I'll put a bunch of little what do you call it, lava rock in the bottom to keep it light, but it also gives a filtration effect to it. Anyway, so I'm gonna get this thing cranked in there, and again, I don't have to seal it off with nothing. I'm just gonna probably cut this off about right here because I don't want it that tall. I'm gonna probably go to where it's about this tall, about the top of that line right there. Anyway.
Okay, so now I have my tub here, and you can see I cut this off I think I cut 3 of them off to make it just about 4 inches tall. And then I put the top and bottom, so that's coming through the bottom right there, as you can see. And I put this little, the threaded to the open, so I can put that angle bracket here on the end. Once we get done with that, so you basically just tighten that up. And again, it's not going to leak just because it's pretty tight, just like that. You can screw it on there tight with, I'm just doing hand tight, but the good news is you're going to have the angle bracket here, and it's going to go that way, so I'll show you that here in just a minute. But here I've got that drilled in. I'm going to use that to basically size up what size my 2-inch riser needs to be, because this is what creates the bell siphon. You've noticed I got the top of that wallered out there too, so it basically creates a Venturi effect, and then there's the bell, so I'll pop that off there. I'm going to cut it about right here, and then I'll just slide it on there and see like what I have. So you might want to smooth off the edges a little bit, and you stick it in there like that, and basically that's what you're looking for, is where it's got about, maybe not even a 1/2 inch right there, just a little bit. And then basically I'll take that cap off, and then I'll toss it right on top there, which takes 2 hands, so hang on a second here. There it is. And I'm just going to slap that right on top. Sorry, I was holding this with one hand, but okay. And now that I've got that bell siphon on there, basically that's where the water will fill up to and roll out. But right here, I'm gonna have to put some holes in the bottom of it. So I just drill some holes in the bottom here. You'll see in just a second. Right there. Notice how I put all those holes in the bottom, so that way basically that water will flow through, and that's what creates the siphon as the pump is filling it up. Now we're ready to go.
All right, so now I'm doing my test fill on it just to see where the water line will be, which you can see right here, like it's just like that. But so it's not even, it's basically up to about right here on my hand, which I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches, which is perfect. But see this, how this is now? You can see how that's kind of swirling around in there just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this bell siphon, so the more full it gets, it creates kind of a vortex in there. But I'm just going to leave that full like that, and then I just dump it over like this just to see will it work. And then it dumps it out at the bottom here. So it's basically a bell siphon. And the thing I like about it is it aerates the fish tank. But basically there's this little process of, this is flowing in still, and it'll just suck that down. It takes some time, but
All right, let's go ahead and just do a real quick fast forward on this. You can see the water level dropping right there. So it's basically in a bell siphon effect right now. Just water flowing out, and I'm just testing this, of course, to see how much water there is. Now I will put that elbow on the bottom there, and then also a little extension of about at least, I like to go at least 5 inches. It really doesn't matter, the longer the better. It's just one, it gives a little bit of back pressure for the bell siphon, and then when it gets done, it's just going to break that siphon and boom, it's going to go down. So I'll do the same thing to the other little bucket on the side, same exact process. I'm just showing some fish in there, but there's the bell siphon. Let's we're going to get the rocks ready, and I'm just going to go through this real quick at 8,000 miles per hour. But basically right there underneath there is where we'll hook that bell siphon. But here you just wash out your rocks, just get a bucket, fill it up, just rinse them and rinse them and rinse them. And the reason is because you don't want all that filth going in there with the fish. Now, of course, if you don't have this set up initially, you want to go ahead and wash your rocks and let your system cycle for at least a week. That way it lets all the stuff settle to the bottom. Because I did kill a couple fish with this, just for the record, because unfortunately they just can't handle that shock. But hindsight's 20/20. Now I put this little mesh cage around there also because it makes it easier for cleaning it out. So I'll put the rocks around that. That was a last minute idea, but I basically just took some metal wire and formed it into a circle so it's big enough where I can reach my hand in there. So because what happens is as you're growing things, even though you got all those rocks and everything in there, those plants will go through there and end up going through your bell siphon, and it'll get clogged up. So that's where you have that nice easy access. You can just pull that off right there, clean it out, put it back in. Now notice with the rocks there too, you have less water. So you're really only cycling about 5 gallons of water. That's a big, I don't even know, maybe at least 50-gallon bucket. So was that one right there is probably a good 30 or 40. But anyway, I just have 2 of them going side by side out of just leftover materials that I had. I spent some money on the pumps, and of course I showed you the parts list at the beginning there. But it's really real cheap and easy, and once you get this going, it just flows. It's a set it and forget it kind of thing. Now if we got solar and so forth, and I've made a lot of progress on this since, but I'll show you some of the follow-up, and I planted some plants. The thing I like about this also is that it's really good for germinating seeds. So if you want to use this as your germination station and then just plant, in your raised beds or even in your ground, which you'll notice some of the work I'm doing in this backyard, I'm getting it ready to grow stuff instead of mow, because I don't like mowing. I like growing. Anyway, I'm glad you stuck around. Like, subscribe, etc. Check it out. There's more to come.
all right, now I've got the gravel on there, and what I'll do at some point in time, I'll put this in here and it'll just roll. And then this guy here will fit on top of there, and notice it's right where the gravel needs to be. Now look, it's dumping out already, so I don't want to do that yet because you notice how dirty that water was. So I'm just going to leave it like this for now because I'm just going to put this down through there because I want all that dirt to settle to the bottom. That's why I leave that water in there, and it'll clear up. It just needs to sit here. And like I said, it's getting ready to rain, so that'll make some of it go in there, but it's okay. It'll settle to the bottom of the tub. And but anyway, that's the way it looks. I get back here. I mean, it's not pretty, but as I build around it, like I'll have a wintertime, I'll put a greenhouse basically around it. I'm going to build around it, and all will be well. But this will be growing all kinds of good stuff. I don't know what yet, but it so far is looking really good. And I will keep you posted. Go ahead and straighten it out. I will fill it up though to find where the water level is, because that's how you can get the gravel. Like I'll have it to where it'll fill up all the way to here so I can see what gravel I need to level out, etc. But it's pretty dang level as it is. Anyway, there's a redneck aquaponics system made out of everything recycled. Pallets, these two things were recycled. I cut that off, just use this to sturdy it up. I got my biggest expense are those two pumps, which are $25 each, so $50, and of course some of the tubing and that kind of stuff. But that's, I mean, I probably maybe have $100 in this whole thing, if that, and most of that's probably gas going back and forth. But anyway, she's going to be pretty.